Hello there, fellow synthwavers. Julian here from synthwavepro.com. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. In this tutorial, we'll take a look at note substitution for bass. If you're tired of always having to play the root note of a chord as your bass note, then this technique will add a little color to your bass lines. Now, before we get started, give this video a like, hit that bell notification button, and share this video. Be sure to subscribe to this channel so you can reference this tutorial a little later. Also, if you wish to support the channel, then please check out some of the links in the description.
Now, without further ado, let's get started.
All right, so bass note substitution, guys. Hope you're feeling well. Thanks for joining me. So basically, this top track here, this is the chords I'm going to be rocking. Pretty much a C minor 7th with a G minor 7th, 2 chord jam, C, G, etc. Nothing too complicated. And over here, all of my red tracks are actually bass variations. So this first one is the most basic bass. So we're choosing root notes, C, G. We'll play and see what that sounds like. And from there, we are going to evolve this bass note pattern. All right, so let me just select all of these guys, mute them, and so we can get started. So again, C, G. Here's the C, G, and again. All right, so this is a typical bass line you would probably play if you were to come up with this kind of chord sequence, C, G. You'd pick the safest choice. You'd pick the root note of every single chord, meaning C, G, etc. All right, so now we have a second example. Let me mute the first example, head on to the second one. Again, we're rocking the same 2 chords here, C, G. And in this example, we have a slight variation. So in this example, we're going from C, which is the root of the C minor 7th chord, to the G, which is the root of the G minor 7th chord. And instead of going back to the C, we're actually going to the D sharp, or in this instance, it's technically E flat, all right? So let's play this out, see what this sounds like. All right, so this is what I mean by bass note substitution. Instead of having this sort of pattern, which is what we originally had, we're using some chord tones to sort of add some flavor and some color to this bass pattern. All right, so let's move on to the third example. This is what this guy looks like. Again, C, G, same chords. This time, instead of starting off on the C, which was the root note, we're starting off on the D sharp, or in this case, the minor 3rd, E flat, same thing. And then we're going to the G, which is the root of the 2nd chord, which is G minor 7, back to the C. And so let's hear what this sounds like. Little variation there. All right, so on and so forth. So again, we're just swapping this C for an E flat. All right, so this is one way we can go ahead and create these cool bass lines. If you're really stuck and you want to get away from always hitting that root note, this is one way of doing it. And it also extends your bass line, so you're not just rocking the C, G. You can add a little more color to it. Let's move on to the next example. That would be this guy over here. Let's zoom in. And so we have, again, the C, the G, the E flat. All right, so we're hitting the E flat on the 3rd time around. Let's play and see what this sounds like. So in this example, we're introducing that E flat. Instead of playing it at the very beginning, we're playing it as the third note of the sequence for this C minor chord. And so we're also shortening that bass sequence. Remember that the original version, our notes were sustained for a longer period of time. And now over here, we're sort of shortening that duration, and it's giving a nice sort of bass line here. All right, so I'm going to play all of them one after the other. And so let's hear what these sound like. This is the more basic version. All right, let's move on to example number 2. Long held sustained notes. All right, let's move on to another one. Almost sounds like a bridge. I actually hear another version, so let's go ahead and create one. This is the cool thing when you start messing around with bass notes, substitution, you start to hear some cool variations. So this is what I'm hearing right now. I'm going to make a duplicate, going to focus on this guy, and I think we can get away with altering this note here to something like a A flat. Let's play and hear what this sounds like. Right, and then this kind of thing you hear a lot in pop music as it resolves. Let me play the entire sequence, it will make a lot more sense. All right, so this section would be ideal for something like a pre-chorus or some type of, section of a song. All right, so let's move on to that final version here. And again, you can go down the rabbit hole. The more you do this, the more you're training your ears to hear different bass line substitution patterns. All right, so I just wanted to hop on here and show some of you this technique in case you are struggling with creating bass lines. I'll see you in the next one. And if you are new to the channel, thank you for hanging out and consider subscribing and liking the video. And if you've been here since the very beginning, I really appreciate your continued support. That being said, stay safe and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.